For centuries, Afghanistan has stood as a mysterious, rugged, and unconquerable land, a place where empires enter with pride and leave in humiliation. From Alexander the Great to the British Empire, the Soviet Union, and finally, the United States, every great power that tried to control Afghanistan faced the same fate. It's no wonder historians call it the graveyard of empires. But what makes Afghanistan so impossible to dominate? And why did America, the most powerful nation on earth, suffer one of its most humiliating defeats here? Let's uncover the true story of how Afghanistan broke another empire. The story begins over 2,000 years ago, when Alexander the Great marched his mighty army through Central Asia around 330 BC. He conquered Persia with ease, but when he reached Afghanistan, known then as Bactria, his campaign turned into a nightmare. The local tribes fought with guerrilla tactics, striking from the mountains, then disappearing into the valleys. Even Alexander, one of history's greatest military minds, couldn't maintain control. His men grew exhausted, supplies ran short, and resistance never stopped. He eventually married an Afghan princess, a desperate political move to keep the peace. It worked, temporarily, but after his death, the region slipped out of foreign control again. This would set the pattern for centuries to come. Empires may conquer Afghanistan, but they can never hold it. Fast forward to the 19th century. The British Empire, at the height of its global power, invaded Afghanistan 3 times between 1839 and 1919. Britain wanted to create a buffer state between its Indian colony and the expanding Russian Empire, part of what was called the Great Game. But the Afghans resisted fiercely. During the First Anglo-Afghan War, British forces entered Kabul with confidence. Months later, they were surrounded by Afghan fighters. When they tried to retreat through the snowy mountains, 16,000 soldiers and civilians were killed. Only one British man, Dr. William Bridden, made it out alive. His arrival in Jalalabad, wounded and alone, became a chilling symbol of what happens to those who underestimate Afghanistan. Then, in 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to support a communist government facing rebellion. At first, Moscow believed it could stabilize the country within months. But the Soviet troops soon faced the same nightmare the British had: endless mountains, shifting alliances, and a population that refused to submit. The Afghan Mujahideen, funded and armed by the United States, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia, launched a decade-long guerrilla war. The Soviets deployed over 600,000 soldiers during the conflict. By the time they withdrew in 1989, 15,000 were dead, thousands more wounded, and billions of dollars wasted. Within 2 years of that withdrawal, the Soviet Union itself collapsed, broken economically and psychologically. Once again, Afghanistan had buried an empire. After the September 11th attacks in 2001, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan, targeting al-Qaeda and the Taliban regime that sheltered them. Within weeks, the Taliban were overthrown. The U.S. installed a democratic government and promised to rebuild Afghanistan. But beneath the surface, corruption spread. Warlords regained power, and the Taliban quietly rebuilt their forces in rural areas and across the border in Pakistan. Over 20 years, the U.S. spent more than $2 trillion and lost over 2,400 American soldiers. Tens of thousands of Afghan civilians died. Despite all that, when the U.S. began its withdrawal in 2021, the Afghan government collapsed in just 11 days. The world watched in disbelief as desperate Afghans clung to departing American planes at Kabul airport, a haunting image of chaos and defeat. America's longest war ended not with victory, but with evacuation. Just like the British and Soviets before them, the Americans left Afghanistan broken, divided, and still defiant. So, why does every empire fail in Afghanistan? The answer lies in 3 key factors: geography, society, and culture. First, the geography. Afghanistan is dominated by mountains, a natural fortress that makes traditional warfare nearly impossible. Foreign armies can take cities, but they cannot hold the mountains. Second, its people, Afghans, are fiercely independent. Their tribal and ethnic loyalties run deeper than any central government. When foreign powers invade, old rivals unite against a common enemy, only to resume their internal struggles once the invader is gone. And third, the culture. For centuries, Afghans have valued freedom over stability. They would rather live poor and free than rich and ruled. This spirit of defiance has outlasted empires, from Macedonian to modern American. Afghanistan has never truly been conquered. Empires may occupy its cities, but they cannot tame its soul. Each one, Alexander, Britain, the Soviet Union, and now the United States, came believing they could change the land. But in the end, it was Afghanistan that changed them. The mountains remain, the tribes endure, and history continues to whisper the same warning to every great power. You can invade Afghanistan, but you can never control it. That's why this land will forever be known as the graveyard of empires.